Can you talk more about the hero's journey in the context that you're bringing it up here?
Yeah, it's funny, I wonder how you feel about this, Catherine. It's funny, when I first became a nurse, it was about 13 years ago now. I'd been a teacher before that. And in teaching, as a teacher and an educator, I felt very empowered to be myself, like to just really be who I was. There was so much creativity in that job. It was so full of these wonderful, wild, gorgeous people who were just doing it for the kids and were out for, they were really dedicated. I mean, teachers are an incredibly dedicated group of people. They don't get pushed through a hierarchy, though, in the same way that people in medicine do. And so when I walked into medicine, I really felt like I had to toe some party line. Like there was this body of medical knowledge that I had to somehow then become a representative of. Like that I was like, I can't talk about veganism. I can't talk about, psychological health. I can't talk about spirituality. Like I can't do the things that would make sense to me. I'm going on my own healing journey as I'm working in the medical field. I have my own challenges and my own health challenges, my own mental health challenges. But I feel that I have to hold the party line, because there's this idea that there's knowledge out there that I couldn't possibly know. And there always will be. I mean, one of the main things you have to cultivate as a medical provider is humility. Like if a patient comes to you and says, "Did you hear about this?" I mean, just this weekend, I heard about like stem cell treatments for knee replacements. And I didn't even know that this was going on. This is an established care. Like that, I had no idea this was even a thing. And so if you're not cultivating humility, you're absolutely not doing the job right, But there's I think a difference with humility and with being kind of like passive. And I think in the beginning of my career, there was a part of me that was somewhat passive. I did what the doctor said. "Oh, you have nausea? Okay, I'll give you Zofran. Okay, you have this. Okay, I'll give you this medicine." And that that movement in medicine that's just about such a dedication of the pharmaceutical response, is the pharmaceutical option and answer, it's becoming a dead paradigm. I hope it's becoming a paradigm that we're shifting out of, that we can start talking about other things. But I remember, I went through a period, and we'll get to that with the book, where I was so raw and hurting and heartbroken as I went through this challenge. And I showed up at work every day like that. And when your boundaries are so beaten up and your kind of life force energy is so beaten up, it's much harder to hide, And the real me came out. And it was the first time that this had ever happened. I was talking to a patient with really serious Crohn's disease. And Crohn's disease is a horrible disease. It's really, when I learned about it in school, I was like, "Oh, you got some ulcers in your stomach. All right, who cares? Like, all right, you got some inflammation going on. No problem. You take some medication." Being on the surgical side of it, it's one of those relentless autoimmune conditions that can be incredibly cruel. They're just like truly cruel, And I was talking to a guy who was really struggling with it. He'd had surgery, and he was a veteran, and then after his experience in the war, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease and, had failed medication treatment and ended up with probably the worst complication, which is an enterocutaneous fistula between the bowels. So the actual tissues basically were dissolving because of inflammation. They were just opening up because of inflammation. It's incredibly, incredibly challenging experience to be in. And he had his surgery, had been successful. We'd fixed the thing. And he and I were talking, and I just remember he was looking at me and he was like, "What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to understand what's happening to me? Who's going to take care of me? What medications are going to work?" And I just looked at him and I said, "Buddy," I mean, I from a place of this, deep compassion, I was like, "You are the captain of this ship, my friend. This is your journey. And he was like, what do you mean by that? And then we had this really beautiful conversation about the fact that there was no doctor that was going to heal him. Nobody was going to do it for him. And in the setting of a complex situation like that, I was like, you have trauma from being in the war. Who knows what your childhood was like? Your body is, and I had been reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is a pivotal read for anybody that's in the medical profession and anybody that's struggling with a medical condition. It's like a must read. And so I talked to him about the book, and I basically just said to him, I'm like, this is your hero's journey. I'm like, you are the central figure of your own story. And what we can do is help you here and help you there. But if you're not getting your needs met, you have to keep moving on rather than keep looking to the system to give you a response. We don't even know in medicine what causes autoimmune conditions. How are we supposed to be the people who, we don't even know why certain cells turn cancerous? If we did, we'd cure cancer. There's limitations to medical knowledge, and that doesn't mean that things can't be healed though. That's the beauty of it, is like, yeah, there's this body of knowledge, and then there's me as the patient, and the space between us is full of possibility. And that possibility defines how you make your journey. And patients who heal, patients who find a way to, calm down their inflammation enough so that they can live their life, are people who say, I'm going to do the acupuncture. I'm going to read a book about cleanses and do some weird stuff. I'm going to stay on my biologic medication. I'm going to get massage regularly. I'm going to do some EMDR. I'm going to do some Reiki healing. I'm going to start building a spiritual practice, whatever. It doesn't matter what you do, because the beauty of, and this is a good segue actually into talking about the book, is that the narrative that we write about our life makes our life. And by putting yourself at the center of the journey, rather than the doctors and the experts and this and that, what it does is it keeps you in a place of power, and it allows you to make decisions so that you can navigate your life with as much grace and joy as possible. And so I think that's the thing. It's funny to feel so strongly that when a patient sits in front of me and says, hey, I'm struggling with this or that, what I see is a person who has shown up for a visit on one day. I have nothing to do with the outcomes of their life. I can give them and gift them some kind of information or conversation that will allow them to change. And it's funny because, this patient, he was like a burly, military guy, who I just would never have thought. He would have been the last patient I would have thought I was having this conversation with. But I talked to him for like almost an hour. The surgeon went on with their day and was doing their thing, which is appropriate. That's why I'm there. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me,